In the heart of Eldoria, the Whisperwood is dying. The once vibrant trees weep, and the people's joy fades. Only a young girl, Elara, can uncover the truth. The forest is calling, but will Elara find the courage to listen? The kingdom of Eldoria was a riot of color, famed for its shimmer blossom meadows, where flowers with petals like polished gems unfurled, catching the light in 1,000 tiny rainbows. Their hues shifted from dawn to dusk, painting the landscape in ever-changing wonder. A gentle, almost melodic hum always filled the air, a sign of the Eldorians' deep and kind bond with the Whisperwood. They walked through its ancient trees with soft steps, listening to the very breath of the forest. Children learned to hear stories in the rustle of leaves and lullabies in the babbling brooks, a sweet, earthy smell of rich soil and pine needles mixed with the soft scent of the shimmer blossoms, making everyone feel happy and healthy. Our story's hero was Elara, the youngest of the royal children. She was quiet and watchful, very different from her brave brother and graceful sister. Elara often slipped away to a hidden part of the Whisperwood, where stood a very old, grand oak tree with roots like sleeping giants. While other children played games, Elara would simply sit by this tree, resting her hand on its rough bark. She didn't speak, but she would close her eyes, listening not with her ears, but with her heart, as if the tree whispered ancient stories only she could understand. One day, Elara noticed a small change in the Whisperwood. The bright green leaves on some of the younger trees seemed a little less vibrant, a touch duller, as if a soft gray dust had settled on them. Then, the joyful chirping of the forest birds seemed to quieten, not all at once, but little by little. The usual hum of the forest grew fainter, as if the Whisperwood was holding its breath. Most people didn't notice these small shifts, but Elara did. She felt a shiver, like a cool, unseen breath passing through the trees. Soon, those small changes grew bigger. More and more trees, even the strong, old ones, began to lose their bright colors. Their leaves turned a dull, dusty gray, and their branches looked heavy and sad. The sweet, earthy smell of the forest faded, replaced by a faint, still air. The silence in the Whisperwood grew heavy. No birds sang. No squirrels chased each other. It was as if the forest held its breath, waiting. And this strange sadness began to touch the people of Eldoria. Laughter became rare. The once busy markets grew quiet. People moved slower, their eyes losing their sparkle. They weren't sick, but their joy, their energy, and their clever ideas seemed to drain away. Like the color from the trees, even the king and queen, strong and wise leaders, felt this heavy cloud. They sent out their bravest knights and wisest scholars to find a cure, but nothing worked. The Shadow Blight spread, quietly stealing the light from their beloved kingdom. Elara watched as the dullness spread, and the joy left the faces of her people. She knew in her heart that this was not just a sickness. This was a deep, silent cry from the Whisperwood itself. While others sought medicine or magic, Elara went to the place she felt most connected to, the very deepest, oldest part of the Whisperwood, near her ancient oak tree. She didn't take a sword or a potion. Instead, she brought only her quiet heart and her listening spirit. As Elara walked deeper, the silence of the Whisperwood grew heavier, almost pressing. She found herself at a small, hidden clearing, where the dull gray light seemed to gather. There, standing as still as a statue, was a magnificent ancient stag. Its fur was the color of twilight shadows, and its antlers, like bare tree branches, seemed to touch the sky. Its eyes held a deep, knowing sadness, as old as the forest itself. The stag did not run. It simply watched Elara. The ancient stag turned its head slowly, its sad eyes meeting Elara's. Then, with a quiet grace, it began to walk deeper into the forest where the grayness of the blight was thickest. Elara followed, her heart beating with a mix of fear and hope. The stag led her to a small, hidden clearing. In the very center stood a massive, ancient stone altar, almost completely covered in thick, withered vines and pale, sickly moss, clearly the source of the deepest blight. The stag nudged its nose at the altar's base, gently brushing away the moss. Beneath, Elara saw a simple, faded carving on the stone. It showed two hands, once joined in friendship or a vow, now brutally broken apart with a twisted, weeping tree carved above them. The air around the carving felt heavy with an ancient sorrow. Elara reached out a trembling hand and touched the cold, carved stone where the broken hands lay. As her fingers met the ancient lines, a sudden, strong feeling washed over her. It wasn't a sound, but a picture in her mind, clear as day. She saw an old king many, many years ago, filled with fear of a coming storm that threatened his kingdom. A sly advisor whispered in his ear, telling him to make a desperate choice, to cut down the oldest, most sacred tree in the Whisperwood, a tree that held the forest's gentle spirit to build a great wall. The king, blinded by fear and bad advice, agreed, breaking an ancient vow of respect to the forest. The act was done in secret, and then completely hidden, wiped from all the kingdom's stories, because the storm passed, and the king was praised for his wisdom. But the forest never forgot. This was the mind-blowing truth. The Shadow Blight was not a curse, but the deep, quiet sorrow of the Whisperwood, grieving a forgotten act of terrible disloyalty. The spirit of the forest had been hurt by this hidden lie, and its pain now spread as the blight. The ancient stag watched her, its sad eyes seeming to confirm what she had seen. Elara slowly pulled her hand from the cold stone. The vision faded, but the truth remained, heavy and clear in her mind. Her heart ached for the Whisperwood, for the forgotten pain it had carried for so long. A shiver of fear ran through her. How could she tell her wise king and queen that their proud history held such a sad, hidden lie? That their very peace was built on a forgotten betrayal? But then, Elara looked at the ancient stag, still standing quietly, its eyes full of deep understanding. She thought of the gray, quiet faces of her people, and the fading colors of the forest. Her loyalty to the truth and to her beloved Eldoria was stronger than her fear. She knew she had to speak. Taking a deep breath, she thanked the ancient stag with a silent nod, turned, and walked back towards the palace, her steps slow but firm. Elara found the king and queen in the royal hall, their faces drawn with worry. She bowed low, her heart pounding like a drum. "Your Majesties," she began, her voice soft but steady. "I believe I have found the true cause of the Shadow Blight." The king, a good and fair man, looked at her with surprise. "Elara, you, a quiet dreamer, have found what our wisest scholars could not." The queen, kind but tired, added gently, "Child, many have tried. Do you truly have an answer?" "Yes," Elara said, her voice growing stronger. "But it is not an easy truth. It comes from deep in the Whisperwood, from a secret long buried." She then began to tell them of the ancient stag, the hidden altar, and the vision of the king who, out of fear, had broken a sacred vow to the forest. As she spoke of the forgotten act of disloyalty, the king's brow furrowed and the queen's eyes widened in disbelief. "Nonsense!" the king finally boomed, though his voice lacked its usual force. "Our ancestors were honorable. Our history is clear. There is no such betrayal in our past." The queen shook her head sadly. "Elara, dear child, the forest's sorrow must be playing tricks on your mind. This cannot be true. Please, your Majesties," Elara pleaded, her voice ringing with a conviction that surprised even herself. "Come with me. The truth is not in scrolls, but in the heart of the Whisperwood. The source of the blight itself will show you." Reluctantly, the king and queen, along with their advisors, followed Elara. She led them through the increasingly silent and gray forest, past trees that felt brittle and cold, until they reached the hidden clearing and the ancient stone altar. The air here was heavy with an unbearable sadness, and the Shadow Blight was thickest, clinging to every withered vine. Elara pointed to the carving of the broken hands. "This is where the ancient promise was broken," she whispered, her voice filled with a sorrow that mirrored the forest's. "A king, long ago, out of fear, cut down the sacred tree that held the Whisperwood spirit, and then hid his act. This place remembers. The forest remembers. The king looked at the altar, then at the spreading blight around them, and finally into Elara's clear, unwavering eyes. The heavy sorrow in the air, the unmistakable age of the carving, and the absolute honesty in Elara's voice broke through his disbelief. The queen gasped, placing a hand over her mouth, tears welling in her eyes as the forgotten pain settled in her heart. They saw the truth not just with their eyes, but felt it in the very air around them. With tears in their eyes, the king and queen knelt before the ancient altar. The king's voice, though heavy with regret, rang clear through the quiet forest. "People of Eldoria," he declared, "we have learned a painful truth today. Our ancestors, out of fear, committed an act of disloyalty against the Whisperwood spirit, and this act was hidden. For generations, the forest has carried this sorrow. We were wrong to forget, and we are here to make amends." The queen then held up a tiny, glowing sapling, a sprout from the very first, purest shimmer blossom. With Elara's help, they carefully planted it right beside the ancient altar, where the broken hands were carved. As they covered its roots with soil, the king spoke words of deepest apology to the forest, promising never again to let fear or secrets harm the bond between kingdom and nature. The entire kingdom, gathered behind them, watched in solemn silence, their hearts joining in the sorrow and the hope. And as the last handful of soil settled around the sapling, a faint, beautiful hum began to rise from the Whisperwood. It was soft at first, then grew stronger, like a forgotten song finding its way home. The dull gray on the closest trees began to lighten, a tiny spark of green returning to their leaves. The air, once heavy, felt lighter, filled with a fresh, sweet scent of newly awakened life. The Shadow Blight was beginning to lift. In the days and weeks that followed, the new sapling at the altar grew strong and tall, its leaves a vibrant, hopeful green. As it grew, so too did the Whisperwood shed its grayness. Colors burst forth, brighter than ever before. The birds returned, their songs a joyous symphony. The sweet, rich scent of the forest filled the air once more, and Eldoria pulsed with life and laughter. The Shadow Blight was gone, and with it, the quiet sadness that had touched the people. The king and queen, humbled and wiser, never forgot Elara's courage. She was no longer just a quiet dreamer, but became the keeper of whispers, honored for her deep connection to the forest and her unbelievable loyalty to the truth. She taught the children of Eldoria that true peace does not come from hiding mistakes, but from facing them with honesty and a brave heart. For a kingdom built on truth, not just beauty, would forever bloom. Hey there! Thanks for tuning in. Remember to hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe for more. I love you.